Here we go.
Welcome to the Josh Dixon Show or Josh Dixon Show podcast. I'm not sure what we're going to brand this yet. Um, let's go around the circle. Starting with Dan. Dan, who are you? What do you do?
Think it's technically a square, but I am Dan Highwind. I am a college English professor. I am a novelist. I had to remember that. And I also have small children, which means that I am prone to dad jokes.
Hi, I'm Trevor. By day, I lead a software engineering team. And I guess by night, I like to listen to video games and play video games. And by listen to, I mean watch YouTube videos about other people playing video games.
I'm Michael. I'm also a novelist, and I hate dad jokes. No, I guess I don't. I'm ambivalent.
And I'm Josh Dixon, freelance filmmaker, business owner, and love movies, video games, everything in between. Today, we are going to be talking about childhood video games, meaning your favorite from childhood that kind of formed, I don't know, your view of video games at the time, sort of got you into the whole thing. So not all-time favorites, because that's a little different. That's going to be a little bit more modern. Something that you remember as a kid.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, right. Anybody want to go first on this one?
I'll go.
Go for it.
So this is a really hard question to answer because I think different video games kind of create a point at different points of my growing up. So I can categorize it really on across three separate games that all in different points of my childhood were my favorite or the most influential. Starting at the beginning when I was probably like 6 years old, like the first game you ever actually play and get addicted to, that is a meaningful game in your memory. It will always stick in your memory as sort of your gateway. For me, that was the original Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1. My dad had come home with the PlayStation from Costco. I didn't know what it was. He bought it for himself. And I just started playing Crash Bandicoot. And that was my first like true video game love. Now, because I was on the Sony side of the house, I think everyone else experienced that with Mario instead of Crash because it was a very similar character, and I think they were probably competing with each other for that type of style of game.
So, like, how old were you at that time then?
Six. It was literally six.
Six?
It was before I moved to Orange County. I was still in San
wow.
Diego
Which
County.
one of those properties is objectively better?
Well, Mario or Crash Bandicoot?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
not
you
a hypothetical
can't really
question.
speak in objectively
Yeah.
at all.
Mario is definitely the bigger like household name. Um, I always enjoyed Crash Bandicoot more than Mario between the two, but I think critically that's the inverse.
So, because I never had a PlayStation 1, the first time I ever played original Crash Bandicoot was in Uncharted 4. When
Yeah.
when Nate sits down and plays Crash Bandicoot and you like actually play like one of the first levels. First time I ever played Crash Bandicoot was through Uncharted
Oh
4.
yeah, oh yeah.
Like,
Fun fact: the same creators that made the first game I ever played also made The Last of Us.
yeah, Naughty
Same
Dog.
development
That's
studio.
true.
So, what is it about? Was there anything particularly special about Crash that stood out to you as a kid, or is it just the idea that this was the first video game that you like got into?
Honestly, I think it's the latter. Like
Okay.
looking back, like just a game. Like I think if it would have been my second or third game, it wouldn't have that impact in my memory. It was just my brain had never been introduced to anything like this before, and it was that introduction. And actually, that sort of pattern is how I would characterize the next two games, which are just like introducing your brain to a whole new world that you didn't think or know was possible. And so the next big game in my memory that I absolutely played a ton of, probably addicted to an extent in high school, was Halo 2. And it wasn't for like the game was good. No, don't get me wrong, but that wasn't what made it stand out in my memory. It was Xbox Live
Yep, yep,
and the
that's it.
ability. I remember the first time, Josh, you and I jumped into an online match in Halo 2, and it was like our brains couldn't fathom. Like this can't be real. This is too cool to
Yeah,
exist.
for anyone born like in the early 2000s or later, the idea of playing a game online with somebody in a different house with a little communicator headset was kind of unreal, and that's like whatever today. But I
Yeah,
remember doing that and thinking like I feel like a super secret agent right now. This is awesome. It was a
we
weird
can
feeling.
we can talk to each other and coordinate
Coordinate,
our
capture
moves.
the flag and all that. Yeah.
which like never happened because everyone just like ran towards people and shot. But
Right.
like whatever, the prospect was enticing enough.
Right.
And then the last game I'll mention, which is once again similar arc, would be Oblivion, and that was my introduction, I think, to open world games. It
Elder
was the first
Scrolls
time.
4.
El- 4,
Yeah,
4.
Skyrim is 5.
Elder,
4. Yeah.
Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion.
Has there been a 6 yet?
No.
No.
I mean, Elden Ring is like now like the 6th. I mean, it's
Well,
not the same studio, but that's basically the same game, right?
In a lot of ways.
No.
No, but Bethesda is
No,
known
it
for
scratches
taking
the same itch, though.
an entire childhood
Oh,
will
yeah.
pass by before they come out with a new, Elder Scrolls game.
Didn't Elder Scrolls? They had Elder Scrolls Online though, so like
It's
a lot
different.
of their work went into that.
That's
Isn't that
happening
right?
right now,
No, it's
and
a totally
I'm
different
not.
studio.
It does feel very different to me. I can't get into it.
Wait, but it is called Elder Scrolls Online. Like it is supposed to be the same universe.
Same universe,
Right.
Owned
totally
by the
different
same,
style.
by the same parent company,
Okay.
all that, but it's not the same kind of like single player campaign polish. It's more of a, I don't even know what MMO. I guess I'm not really
Yeah.
sure what
Yeah.
you call it.
To also just fun anecdote to put it in perspective, Elder Scrolls 4 came out in like 2008, 2009. Elder Scrolls 5 came out in 2011-ish, and it's anticipated that Elder Scrolls 6 will come out in 2030.
Holy moly!
Quite the gap in development.
Right?
I mean, are there even
Like,
going to be like what are video games going to look like at that point?
That's the
who
thing.
knows? They already announced it. They already said they're doing it, but it's they haven't even released the game that they're releasing before that.
Yeah, Oblivion launched with a 360, I think. I think it might have been a timed exclusive at the time. It was
Oh yeah,
kind
was
of
it closer to like 2006, 2007?
well, 2000. Oh, I don't know my dates. I thought '08 might have been when the 360 came out, but I can't remember. Might be off.
I think that game, Oblivion, and then the second one,
Skyrim.
You mean the
were
fifth
like,
one?
Fifth one.
well, yeah,
The
but
one after
yeah.
Oblivion.
they were. It's like the most addicting games I ever played at that time.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
couldn't get enough of it. So like probably by design, it like hits your serotonin so specifically.
Yeah.
But like you can
You-
do whatever you want, and like each time you get a little like power up, and you're like, oh, I feel good about myself.
Yeah. And I think that's what stuck in my memory is just the freedom to do things however you wanted. You could go wherever you wanted, you could tackle quests whenever you wanted. The world was open to you. You could do whatever you felt like, and you could interact with people. Remember, you could steal if you snuck into shops at night. You could steal goods and then sell them and get your money up and buy things that you needed. It was limitless in my mind at the time. It was limitless on my possibilities, and that was like the last huge arc in my adolescent brain about like this. I
What
can't
video games
believe
could
this
be.
is possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what was the gap between you playing that game and then playing what are those games? Grand Theft Auto. Because I feel like that, like for people our age, like that would have been the first game for a lot of guys that like they were like they sensed that freedom because that was that was
Probably
kind of
like
the same appeal.
I think you're probably right in that if I had played Grand Theft Auto first before Oblivion, that probably would have taken its place. Is that like a free ability to do whatever you wanted? I was
Yeah.
not allowed to play Grand Theft Auto as a kid because everyone thought it was just for people who were going to become criminals.
Yeah, a bunch of
You're gonna be a
family
start
juvenile
selling-
delinquent.
something.
Yes.
If only they knew.
So I think you're right. Like there's a lot of similarities, but it just happened to be the first open world game I've ever played.
So the first video game I ever played, I was 3 years old, and it was a Sesame Street game on the NES, and it involved it was like carnival games or something like that. Like it was like really really low tech. So I'm not.
Does it hold up?
No. So yeah, that's off the list. The other one I really liked was an old DOS game on the computer called ZooKeeper, and it was all about like keep getting trash out of zoo enclosures for animals or something like that. And I played it before I was before I could read. And what was fun is that it asked you to type your name in. And I remember that every time I think of my name, I think of spelling Daniel, because what I would do is I would ask my mother, how do I spell my name, to type it into the game, and Daniel. And I think of that game every time I write my name. It's odd. So, but those are some like early games that I played. The game, though, that I would say is the one that has been most foundational to me is Final Fantasy IV. And when I knew it, it was Final Fantasy II, because I played the Super Nintendo version. And so while all of my friends grew up with Cloud and his airplane wing sword, I was very much into Cecil and Kane and Rosa and all of that. I have since replayed all of the 8-bit and 16-bit Final Fantasies. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've played them all. I played them all in a row.
Was 7 the first?
7 was the first 3D one.
Okay.
So I played 1 through 6. 1 through 3 were on the NES, and 4 through 6 were on the Super Nintendo. So 1 came to the US, 2 or 4 came to the US as 2, and then 6 came to the US as 3. So it was odd. But what really stood out to me about those games, and about 4 in particular, a lot of the Final Fantasy games in the 16-bit version is all about customization and tinkering with your party. It's about killing a million boars so that you can level up all of your stats, so that you can get all the best equipment, so that you can trick out everything. And that is just a tinkerer's dream. What is very interesting about 4 is that the story is the centerpiece, and you actually can't control your party. The main character is Cecil. He is the bad guy. And you start by, he is like the head of the Air Force, and he comes in and he takes out a group of wizards who are minding their own business and like kills a bunch of people in the very beginning. So you star as a war criminal, and then the entire plot is once he sort of realizes that he's a war criminal working for a dictator. It is his redemption arc. And I've seen that story in other media before, but in Final Fantasy, it's really quite compelling. And the characters you play with in your party, they come and go as the story goes. So the monk will be in your party for a while, and then he'll leave, and he'll come back, and he'll leave again. And then the ninja will be a part of your party, and then he'll leave, and the summoner will be a part of your party, and then they'll leave. And it's very, very dramatic when the characters come and go. And, unlike the other Final Fantasy games where character takes a backseat to kind of party tinkering, even the really story-based ones, like 6 has a very, very complex story, but there's like 16 playable characters, and you can only play with 4 at a time. With 4, you have who you have, and and the story will revolve around that. And I guess what it taught me about video games is that they can, even when they have a terrible English dub, even when they have it's so meme worthy now, even when they reboot it or remaster it, they've remastered it 1,000 times, but they will keep some of the awful English dubs. Like, there's this wizard who has this time where he says, "You scoundrel, you spoony bard," and they just keep it every time.
Translation problem?
I don't know.
I don't know what a spoony bard is.
I don't know what a spoony bard is.
Bard that spoons you.
It's this wizard who's upset at this bard who has run off with his daughter, and like he blames the bard for his daughter's death. And like that's the other thing too, is like people are dying all the time in this game. And like so there's lots and lots of pathos here. And I keep finding out that I come back to it and come back to it and come back to it. And, you know, and now that I'm a literature professor, so I know where a lot of these themes came from. You know, the sort of the reformed person who goes on a redemption arc. You know, he starts out as a dark knight and he becomes a paladin, and that's a big deal. You know, that's a storytelling trope that I've seen in other things, but this was in a video game. There's this climactic time where he has to, in order to become a paladin, he has to defeat the ghost of his father. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Hamlet did it. But the thing is, it's like, I keep finding myself rewriting Final Fantasy IV over and over again. And again, for good reason, because like I said, Hamlet did it. But that's the one that has really stuck to me. That video games can have a compelling story, and then you can be part of that story, and that is part of what makes it fun. Is that I think it's a perfect mix of story and interaction, and so that was my pick.
How old were you? Do you remember?
So this is a good thing too. The Super Nintendo was my brother's. I've got a brother. He was born in 1980. I was born in 89. So he's 9 years and some change older than me. And so I wasn't allowed to play it because it's his. And I certainly, if I did sneak it to play it, I certainly was not allowed to touch his save file. But
Ooh, yeah.
most of what I was exposed to was what we would now call Let's Play. So what I would, I would watch him play. And like my other brother, our middle brother, we would sit like perched on the bunk bed as my oldest brother was playing it. And we would almost like pretend like we were the characters, like, oh, like, you know, Matt Cecil, and then Nathan will be Kane, and then Dan will be Edge. And like, that's the way that we're like, we would almost be along for the ride. And it's honestly as early as I can remember. The game came out in 91. But I first played it myself all the way through 7 or 8. And you know, so it's kind of baked into my bones. I'd watched him play it almost, you know, completely. Now, my first playthrough, I was 8 because it was after he went to college.
Okay.
And so that was, and I remember I used to get stuck and I would call him and ask for help.
I'll say for me, that's interesting because like I'm not only like the youngest in my family, but the youngest in my entire family, and I grew up like next to all of my cousins on my mom's side. So like everyone played video games that I wasn't allowed to. So like all of the ones that I am most kind of like influenced by are ones that I probably saw someone else playing before I ever even touched it, and like my eyes would widen up and I can't believe this like is something that exists in reality. Like I remember thinking about that this, I guess the first Super Nintendo Zelda game, whatever that one's called, the
Link to the Past.
Link to the Past, yeah. I was like, this can't be real that like a game exists that's like this, where like you're collecting different gear and get to like use it in these different ways. I think my brain would have been broken by Final Fantasy IV as far as like how, because that sounds dope as hell. But like I probably saw the closest thing to that was like meant I don't know, meant more for kids, which was Mario RPG. That game was like awesome to me. That it was the first time that it was like, oh, Mario, but like there's story, and there's kind of like continuity in it too, of like they acknowledge like that these characters kind of existed outside of just like hopping around and like literally only being things that you control with the controller, as far as like they'll talk about past encounters between Mario and Bowser, and like you go around as Mario, and like normal people are like, you're the Mario? Like, prove it. And you jump, and they're like, you really are? Because you can jump really well.
I'm blanking on what
as
this is.
as a plumber, he's obviously
So
excellent.
it was, I think, 95 or 96.
Mario
It was
RPG?
one
Mario
of the
RPG.
very last Super Nintendo games.
Yes.
It almost looked 3D.
Yeah.
My brother never got it because it was like it came out like the year before the N64. My brother never got it for some reason, and then it was really rare for a while, so I never got it either. Because for a while I was collecting Super Nintendo games after my brother left, but it was rare, and so they never had it at used game stores. And I had never played it until it's on the Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
The SNES Classic, and I played it. I haven't played through it, but that's the first time I ever encountered it.
It's got like a faux 3D kind of angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Square, who does Final Fantasy, did it in partnership with Nintendo.
Venture. Yeah.
Okay. I've never heard of it.
It's awesome because like at one point, there's an optional boss in one of the last towns you go to that you need to do all this stuff. I don't remember all this stuff, but it's crazy. Like all this extra stuff to like be able to open this one door, and you fight this giant like Lovecraftian entity that's like bent on destroying the world, and it looks nothing like anything would ever look like in a Mario game. It's amazing. I don't know how much I learned about
You don't have to go that deep on it.
Yeah, the hero's journey and stuff from
Dan's the writer.
Well, Michael is too.
Oh, Michael is too, but Dan teaches it all day, every day, so I get it.
I don't. Yeah, that is true. I don't teach it to anyone. I don't know. I find it to be like a very charming game. It's it like went all out. I wish they could have still made like I think it's interesting. I don't know when the first Mario movie came out. The terrible one.
I think 93.
Okay, but it's interesting to me that like around that time Mario was very much like, what is it? And you could kind of do anything. I liked that era of video games where like now I'm kind of disappointed by the Mario movie, like the aesthetic. Like it looks like the best thing they could make it look like to get the most people to like it or whatever. But Mario now is like he's this, like he's Mickey Mouse. This is what he looks like.
Solidified a certain image. This is what he is now.
Yeah, he's the image. He's the marketing character. He's Ronald McDonald. So I liked that era. The second Zelda game, the Link's Adventure.
Adventure of Link.
Adventure of Link, yeah.
It's just a sequel, and it's a totally different game. That was another one as a kid that I was like, I can't believe like this is real. Yeah, but that's what I probably clocked the most hours on though was Pokemon. I don't know.
Yeah.
That game just sucked you in and spit out the bones.
Yep. Josh, how about you?
All right. I'll kind of cheat a little bit and mention a few things in my early days, but then get kind of through the process of what I started to really see was cool video games. I probably started out with PC games. Like, I'm not a PC gamer. It was like one of those CD-ROM, like learn your ABCs, but play a video game while you do it. But the first time I ever played a proper game outside of arcades or maybe even Sonic was when I broke my arm at 6 years old, and it was the summer, and so like my summer was ruined because I couldn't go like play or do anything. So my dad felt bad, and he went and bought me a Sega Genesis, and I started renting games from Blockbuster all the time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. But the first one I bought, like I owned, was, I had to look this up because I didn't even know what it was called. It was a Spider-Man game on Sega Genesis called Separation Anxiety. Spider-Man Separation Anxiety. And I just learned this today because as a kid I didn't know what it was called. It was just a Spider-Man game. And what's the genre? It's like an arcadey side-scrolling beat 'em up.
Yep.
Is that what you call it?
Sure.
And you play as Spider-Man, but you could do co-op, uh, couch co-op with it, as Venom. So Venom and Spider-Man would team up, and I don't really remember the plot, but I think you can like fight the other symbiotes. Or
I think that
something
is the
like
plot.
Is
I
that
think
it?
you just said what it is.
Yeah,
Is that you're Spider-Man and Venom and you team up?
to fight, Carnage and
In the 90s, that was all you needed.
yeah. And I recall playing that so many times, and there was other stuff like the Jurassic Park Sega Genesis game, and there's stuff like that, but that one was the one I played the most. Two players on the couch beating everybody up. Um, so that one probably was my biggest like, oh, video games. Like this is what you can do with video games. But then after that, you go through the other phases of kind of opening up what's possible, and of course, Zelda Ocarina of Time was probably the biggest one that
You don't say.
um and I even what you said about did you say like your brother would help you get through certain parts, or you mentioned that? I remember my friend in the neighborhood had an older brother who was probably in high school at the time, and uh he would get me to Adult Link because I was too afraid to go through places with the zombies. So like he'd become Adult Link and he'd come out of the temple and the whole marketplace was full of those brown zombies that would like grab onto you and like suck your blood or whatever. So he would actually get me through that stuff. But eventually I was able to play all of it, you know, without that kind of help. But yeah, I'd say probably Ocarina of Time was the first time that I first off it was 3D, and then I mean terrible 3D, but at the time it looked cool. And it wasn't open world, but you had Hyrule Field, so it was kind of that semi for the time that was open world, I guess.
It's like a
Um,
proto open world.
sure. I think you still had to go to certain places in a certain order. Like you could try to go to Gerudo Valley early, but then the bridge was complete because you go there as a kid, but then later you go back and it's broken. I'm not sure if you have to go everywhere in the right order.
There's a lot of leeway with what order you do the temples as an adult.
Right. So
Um,
that was kind of cool. I like that a
I
lot.
I did a couple playthroughs that I did everything to get the big sword before I
Oh,
did any of them.
the Goron?
Yeah.
Yes, and then I would go through. I would do that first, and then I would do all the other temples, and
That's pretty good.
just use the big Goron sword and clean house.
Which could
Is-
break, I believe, but then you could like strengthen it and make it not break or something like that. It's weird.
I don't remember.
Can you not use your shield?
Yeah, you
As a
can't use the
kid,
shield.
you would just like duck down and things would hit your back.
No, with the big Goron sword, you can't use the shield.
Oh yeah,
So it, like-
it's a two-handed sword, yeah.
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 Changes the gameplay.
So I think those are my main ones, and I agree with Trevor on the Halo 2, for instance. That was the first time where the online gaming phase became a thing. But if I ever think back to the most, the things that shaped me as a kid, that Spider-Man game and Ocarina of Time, because then, of course, we went on to make the Zelda movie based
For
on that.
for online, for me, it was Warcraft 3 and Battle.net.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Arthas and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, but even then, it was the multiplayer.
Okay, so the
I-
PvP matches against people.
Oh yes, I will never forget the first time I played versus real life humans, and I just got decimated, and I had no idea what to do. And fun fact, playing Warcraft 3 taught me how to type
Ah,
Mm,
because
Makes
I had
sense.
to learn how to type because there was no microphone. You could only type commands to your team, and so I had to learn how to type really quickly.
that's pretty cool.
And yeah, the rest is history.